got your guitar with you, which is great. Is it plugged in?
I always have my guitar with me. I really do. I just always have it with me.
So John Five, welcome to Life in Six Strings. It's so great to have you on the show. And that guitar is quite beautiful. Tell me about it.
Well, I have always loved Telecasters, and I just have always had this fascination with them because they're looked at kind of like a country guitar, but I just love the history of Fender guitars. And this was our first solid body electric guitar, was the Telecaster. It was called the Broadcaster. The reason it was called the Broadcaster because they would broadcast on TV, and Leo Fender was a huge fan of television and radio, and he wanted these guitars to look really good on TV, hence the name Broadcaster. And I don't know, just when I was a kid, I just loved how these looked, and that's what I play now. And I just love the gold vibe to it, kind of like Devil Goes Down to Georgia, and and he gets that fiddle made of gold, and that's kind of what this is, that guitar made of gold.
It could be, because I know you're a big Kiss fan, so I thought it might be a little bit of a nod to Kiss, because obviously he was kind of all broken up, but it was a bit, it was the kind of glass effect.
Yes, no, but that's something that is a fine coincidence, and it could be in the back of my head. Who knows?
Yeah. So everyone that comes on the show, I like to ask them the question, like, why guitar? So yeah, basically, why was it the guitar for you?
Why the guitar? I think the guitar chose me, and I don't know. It's something. Why do we like certain foods, or why do we like certain cars or certain clothes? And that's how it was with me and guitars. Like, I wasn't really crazy into sports or anything for some reason. you know I just loved the guitar, and it wasn't drums and it wasn't bass and it wasn't singing or anything like that, but I think it was just something that struck a chord, if you will, and really took over my life, and I was completely obsessed with it, and I still am today. I started playing when I was 7 years old, and I'm still obsessed. I mean, I wake up and first thing I do is play guitar, and that's the last thing I do before I go to bed.
How do you not lose that passion? Because I was saying to you earlier that I became obsessed, and it was all I was doing, and I've come out the other side of that. We open up and everyone's out and about now, and so life comes back into the picture, and you get distracted, and so I feel like my passion that I had 6 months ago has definitely diminished a little bit. So how do you retain that passion after all these years?
You know what I do, and that's a great question. I look for inspiration. I go searching for it. A lot of inspiration will strike, wherever and whenever. But I like to look for inspiration, meaning watching someone do something on guitar that's like, oh, wow, that's really new and exciting, and I really like how that is. And that's what I will search for, because I like the difficult, like, part of it, and it's kind of like a puzzle to me, like, see if I can do that, see how well I can master that, if you will, and add that into my music. So it's kind of like a really difficult puzzle for me, and seeing how I can add these pieces of the puzzle into my music, and it really occupies my brain a lot, because I do it so much. And if I didn't do it, I'd probably be, like, screaming at traffic and, throwing feces at people. So it's a good thing I have it.
It's I guess there's a part of the guitar, like with guitar as well. Maybe it's like this on all instruments. It's that you never master it. So your job is never done in that sense. You can never go, right, I've learned all the chords I need to know. It's just, it never ends, does it?
It's so true. It will never end. And what an amazing invention. Same thing with drums or bass or any musical instrument. You will never go, well, I did it. Like it doesn't matter who you are. You'll never come to that point where you can stop learning. And you can master a Rubik's Cube or anything like that, but like something like the guitar or any musical instrument, you'll never really master it. And that's what I love. There's never just like a video game, you'll never get to that last level where you're like, okay, I'm good, so it's a wonderful thing that way.
No, it's incredible, isn't it? So you've got a new album that's out now called Sinner. Tell me about the genesis of that. And was it something that you did during lockdown, or how did it work?
Well, during when lockdown happened, I came off tour and I was in the airport going, hey, what's going on? Why is everyone freaking out? Because it was just starting to happen. And I got home and, watching the news and everything was crazy. And so I called my producer and I said, hey, I want to, produce this album and work on this album with you. And we had so much time, we couldn't even see each other. So I came up with these songs. And what I did, which was different than any other record I have done, is I learned these songs. So I was so tuned into these songs and I would rehearse them and play them all the time because I wanted to go into the studio and play them as a performance. I didn't want to punch in. I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to do anything. I looked at it as like in the 1940s when people would go in and make a record, there was, a couple mics here and there, and they would all play together. This amazing, beautiful music. All the singers would harmonize on one mic. And I said, I want to make a record like that. So before I went into the studio, I just practice. And I just wanted to play starting from the very first note until the last note and have no punches. And that's what I did. And it occupied a lot of my time. So I tried to make lemonade out of lemons, if you will.
So was that a new way of recording for you then, to kind of essentially play as live?
It really came together because I was playing these songs live, and I liked when things sound like the record like that. So it was a lot of work, but it really paid off.
And one of the things that I love about you is, and I hate using this word because I know that guitarists hate it, is like you've got this shred background. It's kind of, there is an element of shred to you, but you have
I
this.
love that.
Do you like it? Because I know that Marty Friedman, who's obviously one of the pioneers of it all, he hates it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Listen, I'm proud of it. Yes. And I like when people say that. So thank you.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. I'm glad it's not a dirty word. It's not as dirty as I thought it was.
No, I embrace that word.
So, well, you have this shred element with a touch of country, a country twang to it, which I love, which is kind of what every guitarist strives for, that they have their own unique sound, and you do have your own unique sound. So, the album is very eclectic, and you've got some interesting names on the album as well, Dave Mustaine being one of them. So tell me about how that came about with Dave, because it's essentially an instrumental album, isn't it? It doesn't really have vocals, but Dave's on it.
Right. And a lot of my songs, I like to have a little vocal hook. And I get that from like Fatboy Slim. I get that from like, little instrumental like instrumental songs, but with like a little vocal hook.
Yeah.
Like, and I always thought that was so good. And so when we were coming up with Que Pasa, the reason it's called that is because we got it from a James Brown. James Brown was talking to the crowd, and James Brown was like, Que Pasa, people, Que Pasa. And how he talks is even so, has so much rhythm to it. So it was like, Que Pasa, people, Que Pasa. And he was just talking to the crowd, but it sounded so funky, just him talking. And so we put it in the song. And so the record company was like, well, we can't have that in the song. So who would you like to have on there? And I was listening to Megadeth a lot. And I said, well, I would love to have Dave Mustaine. And I said, I know his assistant. Let me see if I can get the song over to him. And luckily, he really loved it. I was like, oh, wow, this is great. So he was into it, and he did the video, and it's been a really big. I just love, I don't do this for the money or anything. I just love playing guitar and making music, and people coming to these shows and really appreciating, like, it means the world because it's so done from the heart. There's nothing, it's so real, if you will. And that really makes me feel wonderful when people like it.
No, it's great. And one of the tracks that I love on there is the fact that you got Peter Criss out of retirement, and he's on the Ray Charles track cover that you did.
Yes.
I mean, again, it's like the album just goes, you've got these shred moments, and then you just go to that one, which is completely different. So again, tell me about how that came about.
Well, I've known Peter Criss for a long time, and Peter has this love and appreciation for jazz music, and you can hear it in his playing. And when we talk on the phone, he loves to talk about Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich and all the great players back in the day. And I was just going to end the record with Georgia on My Mind, just with a solo guitar and nice calm after this crazy adventure you just went on. And I thought, well, maybe I'll ask Peter, if he wants to play drums on it. And I had my producer fly down to his place, and he, agreed. And we set up just a couple mics, just like back in the day. And what's so special, not only he did the song in like 2 takes, which is incredible. But what's else is something very special about that is the mics were on, and he was talking to the producer, Barry. And what he was saying was so like cool, it was so from the heart. And I asked Peter if we could keep that in there, and he said yes. And I just think it's a wonderful way to start the song as well.
It's a great touch to the track. It's really nice. I mean, I think I always love those bits anyway, like when people put out those reissues and stuff, and then you hear the banter in between that's going on and stuff. It's like real magical moments. And I don't know, it just makes it a bit kind of contemporary as well. I think it just it gives it that touch. So who was producing the record? Was it Bob again? Because you've worked with Bob a lot, haven't you? On is it Bob Marlette? Is that how you say his name?
It's Barry Pointer, and Barry Pointer is someone that he did my last record, and he did the live record, and he's just this brilliant producer. He is wonderful, and I love working with him. And he actually even helps on the videos and stuff, because listen, I'm not the kind of artist that says like, I know everything, I know all the answers, I know what to do, blah, blah, blah. I never say that. I always say, I don't know all the answers. So, what do you got? And he just has such wonderful ideas, and he's an incredibly kind soul. So I've been working with Barry Pointer on the last couple of records, and it's been wonderful. I'm lucky to have him.
Well, that's great. I mean, one of the things about you is that like you are, as well as being a guitarist, you're also a prolific songwriter. So when it comes to writing songs, what is your process? Do you sit down and kind of write it on the guitar, or how does it work for you?
Well, everybody I've written for, I've been a big fan of. Like if it's Leonard Skinner or Rod Stewart or someone like that, Meatloaf or anything, I know their catalog really well. And if somebody says, "Oh, come write with, you know, Motley Crue or something," I'll know every song they have, and that makes it a lot easier too, because you know what key they like to write in. You know what kind of progressions and what arrangements they like, and that really helps a lot. And writing with these artists and reading and listening to what they say. And I think that's the most important thing, is just listen to what they have to say. Everything that's going to come out of their mouth, except for what would you like to eat or something like that. But anything that's coming out of their mouth is so imperative, because it's exactly what they want. And you just, a lot of people are like, okay, but how about this? It's like, well, no, that's not what I want. I wanted this. And so it's helps a lot in that way. And I think that's really helped me a lot, is because I listen to what they say. And that is like, they're pretty much giving you the answers to the test, you know?
So when was the moment when you realized that you wanted to do this as a profession then?
I that's a good question. I remember it vividly. I was in the Battle of the Bands, and I was probably, I don't know, sixth grade or something like that. Very, very young. And I was doing these songs, and we won the Battle of the Bands, and the place was going crazy. And I saw the little newspaper clipping, and I just was like, I had that hunger, and I knew I was just so interested in it, but I wanted to do it the right way. I was like, oh, okay. And I would practice all the time, just like kind of how I do now. And I would try to learn everything really good. And it's funny, because my parents and my sisters and all that stuff, they would drink and they would, all this crazy stuff. But I knew not to do that, even at a young age. I was like, oh, I'm going to just try to be very